awesome people. Welcome to another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast taking a look behind the scenes of the fantasy sports industry through interviews with some of your favorites in the business. Hutchinson Brown had a day off from school the same day I had a day off from work, so we made great use of that time and decided to record an episode. Hutch and I had a wonderful chat, and it was super cool to be able to hear about him putting out fantasy football content while still being in high school. I can't imagine what it'd be like if I knew what fantasy football was when I was in high school. Anyway, Hutch's dedication to fantasy football content is shown through his work creating content for Football Guys and Dynasty League football, while also hosting his own podcast called Hutch Coming In Clutch. You'll hear him talk about the previous name of his podcast on the show, but Hutch Coming In Clutch, okay? Hutch also talks with me about having a recording studio in his bedroom, seeing the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl, balancing high school life and his fantasy football life, pursuing a full-time gig in the fantasy football industry, a Fantasy Football Expo wedding anniversary, and a ton more. Make sure to go give Hutchinson a follow on Twitter at HutchinsonB_FF. You can follow me on Twitter at @DKCKasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. Get Real is a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. Thanks again to everyone for listening to this show, and make sure you come see me at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, August 11th through the 13th, 2023. Get your tickets now at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. If you're a fan of playing fantasy football, or you put out fantasy football content, or you just like talking with other people about fantasy football, all of the above, sure. Go check out the expo. And now, here's my conversation with Hutchinson Brown on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. Yes, we are. All right. Hutchinson Brown, I'm very excited to have you on the show. I'm excited to have so many people on the show, but getting to sit down and talk with somebody that I don't really know a lot about, I want to kind of get to know. So I'm sure everybody listening also wants to get to know you. How are you doing today, Hutch?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much, Kacey, for having me on the show. I'm definitely this is something I've been looking forward to all morning. I'm very, very excited to talk to you.
Oh, that's awesome. I get a day off from work today because it's Good Friday, and I'm
off school.
There you go. It just worked out perfectly. So I'm glad that I was able to get you to find a time. I found a time. Yeah, we're good. So, yeah. All right, Hutch, we're gonna take it back. I know you're a pretty young individual in this space, especially, yes. But we're gonna go back even further. We're gonna look at when you were growing up. Did you watch football or sports in general? Did you play sports? What was your relationship like with sports?
So I've always been a sports kid. I mean, I still love playing sports today. I mean, I'm just in a couple months, I'll be starting like me and my little brother, my dad are in like a rec flag football league together. My dad coaches, me and my little brother play on the same team. So we're like starting that soon. I love flag football. I love playing it, but I've always been a sports kid. I've always been in and out of sports, playing sports. It's always been fantastic for me. I really got into watching sports, mostly football. I've usually mostly been a football kid. I do enjoy basketball. I do enjoy watching like Olympic sports, but mostly football. I got into it from my grandfather and my mom's side of the family, who are really all Eagles fans. Mm-hmm. And that's how I'm a Philly fan today, because I watched it always with them and always became a Philly fan. That was about like, I'm 16 years old now. That was about like 4 or 5 years ago. I really started watching. I think the first year I really invested watching the football games every single week. That was Carson Wentz's rookie year. In 2016, when he came out for his rookie season as the Eagles starter. Then it wasn't a very good year. And then 2017 happened, and he was an MVP candidate, and that was awesome. And that's really when I fell in love with football, watching that MVP season, because that was like, watching him dominate at that level was just unbelievable. And I really just fell in love with the game there. And since then, I got into fantasy, and now I'm at where I'm at today, creating content and doing all that.
Well, that's awesome. Well, minus the Eagles part, no offense. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I've always got to troll and razz on people when they come on.
Yeah. So to sum it all up, my relationship with sports have always been a positive one. I've always loved the world of sports. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you brought up the Carson Wentz thing, which I like to see, because I mean, as a Cowboys fan, like we said, I got to see that as well, see that happen and be like, oh man, what's going to happen for the future of the of the Eagles? And then look where we are now. Yeah. But there's been a Super Bowl in there, and I'm sure that's exciting for you to be able to see them win at least, one in your short lifetime so far.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane, because like a lot of Eagles fans, like my parents have been telling, my grandparents are telling me, like, you're so lucky, because a lot of Eagles fans, like older than you, haven't watched the Eagles win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like it's like the first one for them, like in their lifetime, and you get it within a couple of years. You're very lucky. Like, yeah, I jumped into sports at the right time, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a hot minute since I got to see, the
Oh
Cowboys
yeah.
win a Super Bowl. I was like a
Oh yeah.
little child. So
It's almost 3 decades now. It's almost 3, right?
Look, that's also making me sound real old. So, because I was alive when the last time that they won the Super Bowl. So, okay. So we went from there, and like you said, you got involved in finding fantasy football in the first place.
Yeah.
How did you come into that world? How did you find out about fantasy football?
So I came into fantasy football in, I think it was 2018. We were at an Eagles, me, my dad, my uncle, my cousin, the 4 of us, we were at an Eagles game. It was the Eagles against the Giants. I think it was week 5 of the NFL season. The Eagles ended up winning that game 34-13. Like, they just completely dominated. And I remember towards the end of the game, like in the 4th quarter, my cousin was looking at his phone. He's checking his fantasy scores. I'd never heard of fantasy football before until this point. And I was looking at it, I was like, what the heck is that? And he explained it to me about fantasy football. You could like pick players and they score points for you. And he explained fantasy football to me. And I was like, this is like, sounds like the coolest thing ever. So I didn't play the rest of that year because I didn't know like DFS or anything. So I didn't play that year, but I studied it and I researched fantasy football. And I was like, this is something I really want to do next year. So next year I joined like a league like on NFL.com, which is now like, I see it as completely the worst platform out there. Like, it is so bad. I hate NFL.com fantasy football. No offense to anyone who uses it, but it's a very outdated platform. But I used it. I joined like a random league. People I had no idea because I had no friends who played fantasy football. I mean, I barely had friends as a kid anyway. I was never really a popular kid at school. But I joined in and I had Christian McCaffrey on my team. And that was the 2019 season where he went bonkers and I had a 13-1 fantasy football championship year. It was like, that went on the regular season. I won the championship all along the back of Christian McCaffrey. And it was just, I fell in love with fantasy from there. And the next year, I joined like about 5-6 leagues. I started one up with my friends, and I won about 2 of them. Or I think I went to the championship in 3 of them, won 2 of them. And then after that second year, I realized I know this stuff pretty well. I can play fantasy. And I was like, I've been listening to fantasy footballers all the time, and the fantasy pros, and the ESPN, like ESPN's Fantasy Focus. Like, I love listening to these guys. JJ Zacharyson, I loved. Late round QB, like that was one of my favorite late round podcast, or the late round fantasy football podcast, one of my favorite shows to listen to. So I was like, how easy is it to start a podcast? So I kind of looked it up, and from there I just kind of started researching and getting going with the podcast.
That is a fun story to hear because when I was growing up, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, I don't remember anybody playing fantasy football. I don't remember that being a thing.
It wasn't as accessible as it is now.
Right, exactly, right? So we didn't have apps. We didn't have the internet really, like it was in its infancy. So yeah, so to hear that when you're in school now, do you hear people saying that they play or see people playing or talk to you about it?
I do. It's actually been really, I do see some kids playing fantasy. I mean, obviously when they talk fantasy, I'm like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, some kids like to have the craziest NFL takes. It's crazy. But I've actually had kids, because I've told people about my podcast in school. I've actually had multiple occasions where kids in school that I had no idea who they were, no clue who these kids were, walked up to me in the middle of the halls or in class and say, "You're that Hutchinson Brown fantasy football kid, right?" I'm like, "Yes." And they show me their lineup. They're like, "Help me set my lineup for this week." I'm like, okay. And I just do it for them. And it's just like I've actually gotten pointed out a couple times in school as like a fantasy football nerd. And it's actually really ridiculous. But yeah, fantasy football is definitely something that's growing in amongst the youth. I've definitely seen like people like getting to bed and getting into fantasy football like around my school. I haven't like played any leagues with any of the kids, but I haven't been like invited to leagues with the kids. But I mean, I would dominate them. It wouldn't be fair. But yeah, it's definitely growing popularity. And I've actually, as I said, I actually had kids like walk up to me and help me, want me to help them set their lineup.
That's really cool. Like, I like to ask people that on the show. Like, do your friends come up to you, or do people like randomly like find out?
Yeah.
Like, you get your dad's, and then yes. So that you brought up podcasting and how you were listening to podcasts, and then decided to look into how to get started, how that works. What exactly did you find when you first started? Where were you looking to figure out how to put out podcasts, and what did you realize while doing your research on that?
So the first thing I searched up, I literally just Googled how to start a podcast, and I looked through and I found, and like this, I'm not sponsored by them like or anything, but I found Buzzsprout. And I don't know if you use Buzzsprout for podcasts. In case you do use Buzzsprout or no?
I don't.
Okay. But Buzzsprout, it's a podcast host. You can put your episodes on there and they send it to the apps and whatever, like regular podcast hosts. But they also have like a YouTube channel, a newsletter. They have everything you need to help you get started. Like everything, like they have like a full checklist of how to start a podcast. So you can check things off and write things down. It's actually like a really great thing. If you're ever looking to start a podcast, like look at Buzzsprout and what they're able to do, like the things they have out there, the information they have out there. It's really great. But anyway, it's also a great platform to host your podcast on. Sorry, mind freezing for a second. But yeah, I was basically just looking at their website, looking at their YouTube channel. That I downloaded like their checklist and started checking things off and like writing things down on like how to start it. And I quickly learned that it's like, this is not very hard. I mean, obviously, like it's hard to do a podcast. It's hard to talk. Like it's hard to do this. But like actually setting it up, it's like anyone can do this. Like it's not like only for certain people. Like anyone can start a podcast. Anyone can do this. You just need like a few tools. Like you just need a topic and you can go. Like you can just do it. Like you don't have to be a special person or anything to start a podcast. And I quickly learned that and quickly realized like I'm gonna go for this. Like this is like I really needed hobbies and I was like, why can't I do this? I was like, I started a podcast and then I started a Twitter account, which before this time is very interesting. I despised all forms of social media when I was in middle school. Like I was in middle school, early high school. Actually, early high school was really when I started the podcasting stuff. Yeah, or actually no, because I started preparing the podcast in 8th grade towards the end of the year because in the middle of 8th grade, I got shut down because of COVID.
Oh,
in the middle of 8th grade, that's when I got shut down. That's when I started preparing it, getting it ready. And then about 9th grade, I started posting stuff. But back to the Twitter, like I never had social media in my life, never had the app, never had any form of social media ever. My parents didn't really want me to anyway.
Right.
And it was funny though, when I was making my first tweet to send out, like say, hey, I'm here getting a podcast coming soon. I originally put my age in the tweet and my dad came over to me to check on the tweet and he was like, I don't know if I would put that. And I was like, no, I have to. I was like, this is like part of who I am. I'm like a teenager trying to make fantasy football content. And my mom was like, yeah, let him do that. So then I ended up did putting it in. And it's actually one of the bigger reasons why that tweet went. So like that tweet kind of blew up a little bit. Like I went back recently and looked at it because like my 2-year anniversary came up and it showed me my first tweet. It had like 270,000 views on it. Like it actually kind of went a little crazy. And like I had so many comments and support. I gained like 100 followers in like an hour. It was like people were really into it, and it's just kind of blown up from there.
I like to hear that with the story of, don't put that in there, because I was thinking about that age of the internet, right? And they're always like, don't talk to strangers on the internet and don't do this and don't do that. So I was wondering how your parents felt about, that being out there, and now that's like your identity. But that's cool to hear that that's kind of what helped bring you to us. And
seriously, yeah.
And fantasy football Twitter is kind of just like a crazy place where there's so many people that enjoy the same thing, enjoy fantasy football. Whether or not they enjoy each other's takes is one thing, but the actual experience of interacting with people. When you found out that there were this many people online that enjoyed something that you enjoy, how were you feeling about that? What were your thought process going into Twitter?
Man, Twitter's been, Twitter, it can be a very dark place, as I've learned. I mean, as I've grown in following, like I'm at like 6,400 followers now. As I've started to grow a little bit more, I've definitely got the haters on me. I've definitely got a lot of people who don't like me. Definitely got people who think I'm just a stupid kid, and that's fine. You can not like me. I don't care. But it's really, really interesting because Twitter, I feel like this is one of the places where I feel most accepted. Really interesting because like I don't know, this is called Get Real. Like throughout my life, like in school and with my friend groups, I've never really felt like truly accepted by a lot of my friend groups. And I've always been moving too. Like this is the 6th house I've lived in 16 years living. Like I've been I've moved a lot in my life. I've always been in and out of friend groups, and I've never felt like truly like accepted. And this community is something like I feel truly accepted by. I feel like like they welcomed me in, and I really feel like a part of it.
Yeah, we'll get into more stuff like the expo and everything a little bit later in the show. I like to kind of throw that in there, but
the expo, I could talk hours about that. That was so great.
We will now. So podcasting for the first time, how was an experience like that? Did you have prior podcasting experiences, or did you just jump into it and just go?
No, not at all. I had no podcasting experience, no video making experience, no public speaking experience, no like speaking experience at all, like none. And it was funny. Do you know, like the first podcast, my teaser trailer that I made for my podcast, because I didn't have a recording studio yet. We were still building it. So what I did is I put I made like a chair blanket for it. It's like dampen the sound around me. I literally put 2 chairs up, and I didn't even have the mic that I have now. I had like this tiny, like a vlogger style mic where it like plugs in. You can like clip it to your shirt.
Yeah.
I had that style mic, and I sat in between, like under 2 chairs, put a blanket over me, and I was like crouched down there. And I like held the mic right next to my face, and I just talked into it. That's how I made my teaser trailer. And I put it on my phone, and I sent it to my computer, and then I put the songs on it that I wanted in GarageBand, and then I exported it into a file, and then I threw it on the podcasting platform. It was just insane. Like, it was so like unprofessional, like as unprofessional as you can be, but it made it work. And it was so ridiculous. That was my first, it was the teaser trailer, and my first actual podcast that I recorded. It wasn't even my own, because I put out the teaser trailer, I put out the tweet, and a couple days later, this guy named Ryan Weiss, I think you know Ryan, right?
Yeah.
NFL, Ryan Weiss. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, I see you're on Twitter. Would you like to come on my podcast tonight? I need a guest for tonight, for no pun intended." You've guested on that podcast before, right?
Yes. Sure
I feel like we were on there together.
We were actually.
Right?
There we go.
We were, right?
Yes, we were. Oh my gosh! Well, light bulb moment.
I can't remember when, but we were.
Yeah, it was a while back. Obviously.
It was a while ago. Yeah, because a while back ago, I was guessing on there a lot more often. Yeah, shoot, I can't remember when. But anyway, Ryan reached out to me. He said, "Hey, we need a guest for tonight." I was like, "Let's go." And I didn't have a recording studio, but I kind of just like set up my desk around me and like just set something up. And I had my first podcast. It was great. Like everyone had it was a really good time. They really liked me, but it was funny though. They threw me in the fire, man. Like they threw me right in. Like they were asking me every question first. Everything was going to like directly into me. Like I was like the person. And it's my first ever podcast I ever really recorded with any other people. And it was absolutely insane. I took it the best I could. I did a lot of research for that show just to make sure I was ready and prepared. And I think I did pretty good. And Ryan and Joshua really liked me. They had me on a lot more club fantasy shows. And now I'm at where I'm at today. Like it was an insane show. But yeah, my first podcast recordings they were so unprofessional, so ridiculous. My first few shows, like I didn't have a studio. It was so ridiculous. Like, I mean, I don't really have like a studio now. I just have like 4 sound dampening blankets hung on my walls, and then I have like all the stuff here behind me. But this is literally like I just like sectioned out like I don't know what the dimension of this space is, like a 6x10 space in my bedroom. Like a 6x10 space in my bedroom that I just sectioned out. Like it's pretty ridiculous. It's literally like my bed, my closet, and then the studio, and that's it. Like I have no other space in my bedroom.
Yeah, like most kids don't have a studio in their bedroom, so that's
no. I have a pretty small bedroom too. Like my 11-year-old brother has like twice the size of bedroom that I do. Pretty hilarious. But yeah, like my first ever couple podcasts were like so unprofessional, so ridiculous, but I made it work.
Yes, you did. And you know, getting into it and actually doing it it's an interesting experience. But you brought up the whole coming to you first with the questions and everything. I hate that so much because I get feel like I'm put on the spot and anything I say is going to be wrong all of a sudden.
Yeah, here's the thing, because you're put in the spot, like you're really put in the spot, you're really put in that spotlight, but it also gives you an opportunity to shine. Like it really does. Like I was taking those opportunities. I was like, this is a moment for me to like really go in depth with what I'm saying, really like give my analysis on this and like go for it and like just set the stage. Like it was a really big opportunity for me. I actually, like, as much as like it was scary to get every question first, I actually liked that I had the opportunity, because I feel like if I didn't, I would just piggyback of what they all said.
Right.
And I didn't really get my opportunity.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell when people are doing that. I've done that before, piggybacked off of, oh yeah, I agree with the same thing or whatever,
When
but
anyone mentions like I don't do IDP. So if anyone's talking IDP, I'm like, yeah, what they said. I don't do IDP. I have no idea.
Listen to
No
them.
idea. No idea what IDP.
That's a good. So putting out a podcast, doing it solo, doing it on your own.
Yeah.
How is going into an experience like that? And for somebody that wants to get started, how should they prepare themselves and really go into it?
For a podcast specifically?
For a podcast, yeah.
Man, that's really, really interesting. I think if you're going to a podcast, you're going to it by yourself. I think keeping the episodes short is a good idea to start because look, a solo podcast is great. Like a solo podcast can be great. But man, if you're listening to a solo podcast for like 40, 50 minutes, an hour, that can get boring. And you also want to keep it short. You want to keep it to the point so that it limits your ability to like stutter and go all sorts of place detours. You keep it short to the point, you're going to be good. So yeah, I would say like organize notes, and especially in the very beginning, because now my podcast, like I don't have many organized notes. Like I just like kind of go because I got enough experience now where I can just go on whatever. But in the beginning, I had more organized notes, very like strict with schedule and time. Like I was just keeping it organized is what you would do, what you have to do in the beginning.
And how do you get more people listening to your podcast? What are your ways of doing that? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, I want to do a podcast, but nobody's going to listen to it. So how do you go about that?
It's for me, it's been social media. Like I've been able to grow on Twitter, promote it all the time on Twitter. And that's how I've gotten people listening. Like that's really, really, my Twitter account came before my podcast. Like my Twitter account came about a month before my teaser trailer posted. And then a month later after my trailer posted, the podcast started to go. And like I had gained a little bit of a following, like a few hundred followers on Twitter by then. So I had a bunch of people listening in. Like my first episode like had like almost 200 listens on it. Like people were into it. Like it was awesome. Like, but really the answer for me was social media. And like with how big social media is now, it's like, that's a great answer. And also like sharing it with your friends, your schoolmates, if you're in school like me or your family, like just sharing it around is also a great idea as well. It's really just sharing it as much as you can.
Sharing it, yes. And social media has been such a blessing for podcast, and especially like around COVID. You brought up COVID, kind of putting a hold on everything. But then it also kind of blew up during that time because there was so many
every celebrity, like during COVID, like every celebrity put out a podcast. Like every celebrity had a podcast. Like everybody started a podcast, and it really just like blew up the podcasting game, it's why it's so big today.
Yeah,
because COVID, everyone's locked down. Like it's really why it's big today.
And yeah, for sure. So how do you go about naming a podcast or coming up? Because I know there's different iterations of how it's going, but how do you go about figuring out the right title, finding out something that's going to stick?
I don't know if I'm the best. I feel like I'm bad at naming my podcast. My podcast is called Hutchinson Brown's Fantasy Football Perspective, which is a fine name. It's very wordy though. It's very wordy. What I would do, I would keep it less wordy than what I've done it there. I would keep it very much less wordy to the point. You also just like, because some people like make their podcast like a completely random like name, and that's not even close to the topic. You want to promote your topic in your artwork, in your name. You want to promote the topic that you're talking about, because then people know what you're actually going to do. Like if you make a podcast about fantasy football and like you just like you call it something completely different, it's not like people aren't going to be into it. Like people aren't going to notice what it's going to be about. Like people don't know. Like you want to make sure, especially because when you name it right, if you're going to come up on a lot of fantasy football searches. Like if you search up fantasy football, like your podcast is going to come up. If your podcast is not about, like if your podcast title is not fantasy football related and someone searches fantasy football, it's likely that's not going to come up. So you just want to make your show about your topic. Make sure it's like surrounding your topic, and also make sure that it's like not crazy wordy. Those are the two pieces of advice I would give. I don't know if I'm the expert at that though.
Well, no, I like the not too wordy thing. I know that but it's different when it's kind of you're using your name and you kind of get it all and telling.
My name's also
people.
kind of long.
Yeah, I was gonna say your name is kind of long.
Like it's a longer name.
Yeah, it's a longer name. So what can you do? That's the name you can shorten it.
I'm given,
oh wait, there's a Hutch right here. No, Hutch. Everybody brings up Hutch, and people like automatically know who you're talking about. So
everyone calls me. Everyone in the industry calls me Hutch. Like everyone just calls me Hutch. Like my Twitter name's Hutchinson Brown. Like everyone on podcasts calls me Hutchinson Brown, but like in the industry, like people like are at the expo or like people just call me like Hutch up. Like everyone just calls it's like my nickname. It really is.
Do people call you that in real life?
Yeah, everyone calls me Hutch. Very people call me Hutchinson.
Yeah. I never got to have a cool nickname, so lucky you. Okay, podcasting, but do you put out any other kind of content besides just doing a podcast? What else do you?
Oh yeah, I do all kinds of stuff. I mean, I actually have a couple of jobs. I do videos for the football guys and their YouTube channel, and then I also do articles for Dynasty League Football, otherwise known as DLF. I'm also working on a YouTube show with them, but that's kind of on the lower now. Shh. We'll talk about it too much. And then I'm also, I'm on Twitter, always on Twitter doing stuff. But I'm also working on a Patreon this off season, I'm hoping to come out with a big Patreon. Might have some Dynasty rankings, a lot of Dynasty kind of content. So that'll be fun. And I'm also looking to make a draft kit, like a redraft draft kit this off season too. So I've been looking for all that. And it'll be really, really fun to see how that goes with the community. I think I've been tweeting about it a little bit. People have been getting excited for it. People are really happy for me that I'm trying to put out this type of content. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
I like it though. It's cool to see how much stuff that you're working on and that you have the mindset that you're going to do that. You've got a goal set and people are excited about it. Cause like
this is really my life. Like I feel like like some people always ask me like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, this is my life. I don't know if I understand this. Like I have school, I have family and friends, and then I have fantasy football. Like that's it. That's my life. Like I don't really do many other things. Like I'm hours and hours a day researching, like developing content, like getting show docs ready, getting things ready. Like I'm like, this is my life right now. Like this is it. And I'm so in on it. I love it. I genuinely, like there have definitely been moments where I'm like, okay, I need to take a break, but there's never been a moment in my fantasy football content creation where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to do this. Like I've always been in on this. I always want to do it. There's not been times where like you need a break, but I've always been in on this.
See, I'm looking back to when I was 16. I'm like, I don't even remember what I was into. I mean, I know general ideas of but I didn't have like a really big passion for anything like that. I mean, I guess I ran, but like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't anything that was like, I could spend hours doing. It was, or maybe playing Tony Hawk. I don't know. I'm a skater. Getting going back to the golden oldies, but okay. So you're doing all kinds of different content, and then how do you figure out that this is the next thing I want to do? This is what I want to do. How do you plan out what you want to do?
Sorry, I don't understand that question.
Well, like, how do you plan out? These are the types of content that I want to put out right now. How do you sit down and go, I want to put out rankings. I want to put out a draft guide. I want to do this. Like, why do you think that it's important to kind of like have your hands in a bunch of different things?
I think as a fantasy football, like I've noticed like people who are like big in the industry, like, cause I really like if I get the opportunity to get this like full time as a career, I'm going to do it 100%. Like I'm in on this and I'm trying to get there. That is my goal at the end of this. Like, that's what I want to do. And that's why I'm trying to really start so early and get in on this while I can. But the people who are big in the industry, you notice like the people who are up there, they can do everything. You can write, you can do video, you can podcast, you can do anything. And I really want to be that. I also because I also just want to experiment. I want to go different places. I want to see what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. Like I've noticed like I'm usually better on a podcast or on YouTube than writing. I do enjoy writing. I do like it, but I think I'm better like on a podcast on YouTube, like talking rather than writing it out. I'm usually not the best with grammar or spelling or anything like that. I'm usually not great with those things because for a while I actually had my dad editing my articles because I couldn't read grammar. Like I'm looking through my articles, like helping me edit because I couldn't do it. It was freaking hilarious. But I've noticed I'm better. Like, I just want to experiment everywhere. That's really the point of the answer. I really want to experiment everywhere, and I also want to be able to be versatile, be able to do everything.
So when people ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you, and I mean, you basically explained,
Yeah.
but
I always say, when people ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I always say it's a long story. Because when I say fantasy football analyst, like okay, because people are like, okay, like I've told a bunch of kids in school about my passions and stuff, and some kids are always weirded out by me. They think I'm a weirdo, and I'm like, whatever, you can think I'm weird, I don't care. I love what I do, and I don't care. But like, when people ask me what I want to do when I grow up, I always say it's a long story, and I always like explain, like, I have multiple jobs right now in the industry, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm just working towards the full-time job in the industry. And people are always like, some people are always like, wow, that's some people are mind blown and saying, like, that is really, really cool. I love that, even though they don't care about football. And some people are like, okay, like, it doesn't make sense to them. It's really weird. But yeah, I always tell them it's a long story.
It's a long story, but it's a fun story. It's fun to hear that, because I don't even remember what I would tell people when I was growing up, and it doesn't matter because, but yeah, to hear that kind of thing. If I was to sit down with a kid when I was growing up and have somebody tell me that's what they, it's a long story, but to see the progress and to see all the things that you're doing is just, at 16, it's just kind of mind blowing that you do so much stuff at that. I don't know many 16-year-olds that are super passionate and super motivated to do something like this.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm trying not to brag. Like, I'm not,
you can brag on this show.
What?
You can brag on this show all you want. I mean, have you
not trying to brag or talk down to people? Like, notice, like, it's interesting. Like, I'll talk to kids about like I'll talk to other kids at school. I'm like, what are your hobbies? Like, what do you do? And like, a lot of answers I get, like, I don't really do much. Like, I don't really do much. And like, I'm like, no, like, what are your hobbies? Like, do you have a career choice you're going after? Do you have something you're going after? And they're like, no, I mean, I got a retail job. And I'm like, oh, like, okay. I mean, cause I got a retail job too. I'm doing that. Like, I got a retail job too that I'm working, but, it's interesting to see, like, it's interesting, like, because I am normally, like, my parent, like, everyone always tells me, and I notice it myself, like, I'm a very passionate person, like, and I'm also very competitive, and it really, like bonds really, really well together, passionate and competitive. Like, any school project, like, if you put me on like a school project, like a slideshow, where I'm going all in on that. Like, I'm going crazy. I'm trying to make it look the best. I'm super organized with it. Like, I can get super passionate or super competitive over the tiniest things. Like, everything is a game, and I'm always winning. Like, like, that's how I feel about everything. And some people are like the opposite, and it's like so weird to see sometimes. But yeah, I'm just like, I think I've noticed that I'm crazy, crazy passionate, and it's weird. It's sometimes funny. It's like some kids aren't. It's really interesting to see that. It's not that it's a bad thing, because this also can get me hurt. Like, if you're passionate about things, you can get hurt if something doesn't work out. But it's just different. It's really, really interesting to notice.
Yeah, it is different to notice. And I can't even think back. Like I already said, I can't think back to 16 and all that. I don't know. And so it's really cool that you're going to have so many experiences right now. I mean, you've done so much stuff that people were probably just like, whoa.
The industry has truly been a blessing. Like, I worked my tail off to be where I'm at today, but I truly have been blessed. I really feel like this industry has truly welcomed me in and with open arms. And I feel so blessed to have like, I've had so many amazing opportunities to meet so many amazing people in this industry. And it's been absolutely incredible. And I truly can't describe it. I truly feel so blessed to be here.
And we're glad you're here too. Really do. I mean, yeah, the community is great. And
it is such a great community. Everyone's so supportive and nice and encouraging. Like, it's obviously bad apples, whatever, but most of the community is really nice, really encouraging, and it's great.
So I guess we can touch on the expo, touch on it. Maybe we'll talk for a little bit about it. But yeah, the Fantasy Football Expo, I've had Bob Lung on and we've talked, and I swear almost every episode it gets brought up one point or another, because it's a thing that people are jazzed about, for real. So how did you find out about the expo, and what was your experience like? How many years have you gone? Give me the whole rundown of that.
Okay, so the expo I found out on a club fantasy show from Joshua. I think I saw it on Twitter, And I asked Joshua about it, and he was like, yeah, it's an expo. It's this thing where people meet up and like go hang out. It's like, and in case anyone here doesn't know what the expo, I mean, does everyone here know what the expo is?
Well,
Do you think the
let's
listeners
just
know?
go into it like people don't know what it is. Let's just go into it because I usually go into like, we don't know anything about anything. So just, so that way we can touch everything.
So basically the Fantasy Football Expo is like a full package weekend, as Casey was mentioned by Bob Lung. He organizes the entire thing. He does a fantastic job with it. But the Fantasy Football Expo is basically a place, like, well, it's not a place, but it's a weekend event, and it's where fans, analysts can all meet up and just talk fantasy football, hang out. There's all these drafts and parties and all types of things going on. Like last year, there's a flag football tournament, which I'll definitely talk about a little bit because I was definitely a part of it. But it was really fantastic. It's a really fantastic weekend. If you're a fantasy football fan or an analyst and you can make it out to Canton, I think this year it's gonna be like, it's usually like mid-August every year. I think this year, it's funny, mid-August, it's always over. The last few years, it's been over my parents' anniversary.
Oh.
Me and my dad have gone over my parents' anniversary. This year 25. So me and my dad, thankfully my mom doesn't care about days. So like my mom and dad were cool. Like my dad just took me out to Canton for the anniversary. It was really great. But, I think this year it's like the 13th through the 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's right there in that range.
If you can make it to Canton, Ohio for that weekend, you should absolutely try to go. It's really fantastic. And it's like, it's obviously like, it's a weekend package. It's like, but it's not like crazy expensive. It's not ridiculous. Like it's affordable, decently affordable. Like it's definitely like a weekend experience, but it's affordable. It's definitely something you could do for most budgets. Like it's really, truly an incredible experience if you have the opportunity to go. But anyway, the first year I've gone to the last two expos. There's been 3 expos so far. The first one wasn't so big, but the last 2 have gotten bigger and bigger. The first one, I was about 1,000 followers on Twitter at this time. So not super big in the industry yet, like not anything crazy, but I was definitely growing. And it was truly like mind-blowing to see, like there were a lot of people there. It was mostly analysts, but I got to meet so many people. It was funny because like I'm like a teenager walking around a bunch of 30-year-olds. Like I'm like the only teenager there. So like I'm very easy. Like I was shocked by how many people were like, Hutch, is that like Hutchinson, Hutch? Like everyone recognized me. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I felt like a celebrity. It was so weird. But like I got to meet so many amazing people. I got to meet some of like my idols in the industry. Like I have a specific story with Andy Bearhands from Yahoo. Me and him are close now in the industry. Like we follow each other on Twitter. We've been on podcasts together. It's awesome. But me and Andy, my dad is funny. My dad's also named Andy, but we were sitting at the Friday night party. It was at the Doubletree Hotel. There's a little bar. It was a Friday night party. And me and my dad sat down, and I didn't even notice at first, but right next to me is Andy Bearhands. And like, I am like my heart is racing. I'm a super, like Andy Bearhands super fan. Like I love his work, love his stuff. And my heart's racing. And I tell my dad, like, that's Andy Bearhands right there. And he's talking to somebody else. And me and my dad are just eating. Like I wanted to talk to him. I don't know. I was pretty nervous. Because here's the thing. Right before the expo, this girl, Steffi Smalls, who I'm friends with on Twitter, introduced me to Andy. And like he had recently followed me on Twitter, and we had linked up on Twitter. And he turned around, and I just heard a voice in the back of my head that said, Hutch. And I turned around, and Andy Burns is talking to me. And I'm like, I just lose my mind. I really do. I lost my mind. I lost my crap. And my heart was racing. I was like, oh my God. And we just talked for a while about like my content, my journey so far. And then I went out and talked to some other people. And my dad and Andy actually became very close friends. Like they've talked to each other for a while about like their lives and stuff. It was really great. And shout out to Andy Bearhands. He's
for real. Yeah.
He's really a fantastic guy. Like I've talked to a bunch at the other expos, like truly a fantastic guy. Amazing personality, amazing guy. But yeah, I got to meet so many other amazing people at the expo. It was truly a mind-blowing experience. And also, Bob Long invited me to the Kings Classic drafts. I got to participate in a really exclusive league. It was like a really nice in-person draft. Like, and I never had a draft before where like the board with the stickers and all that. I never had a draft like that before. Never once. And I got to experience it with all the people. We had an auction draft, which I had never done an auction draft.
Wow, you're just getting thrown into it all.
I got thrown into an auction draft. I had never done one before. And I was like, oh crap. And I had to do like a month. And like within a month, I did I think if I count it right, I think I did 56 mock drafts, full on mock drafts in the last month before the expo for that auction draft. I was so researched, so prepared. I ended up missing the playoffs in both leagues by one spot. But it was a really, really fun experience doing those drafts. And I did it in the second year too. You want me to just move into the second year expo?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the second expo, I'm at about like Twitter following I don't know, like 4,000, 5,000 around this time, like somewhere around there. And I'm walking in and there's so many more people.
Yeah.
The before party that was at this little bar in the first one was at this ginormous plaza that was the main party in the first one. This second one, like it was just so many more people, especially more fans. And it was crazy. Like I had like a bunch of analysts recognize me. We all hung out, like shook hands, like we met at the first expo. We saw each other again at the second expo. I had fans coming up to me, nervous to talk to me, like all nervous and like shaking. And I'm like, bro, like, come on. I'm like, you're twice my age. Like, you don't have to do this. Like, I'm like,
you're twice my age.
You're twice my age. You don't have to do this. Like, this is like seriously though, if you ever like see me in the expo or like just like literally come up to me and say hi, I'm really chill. I'm so happy to meet you. Like, I'm really just happy.
Yeah, for sure.
You. Like, I really am. But the few people were talking to me, I specifically want to shout out. I can't. I if I remember their names, I would shout them out. But it was a father and a son that came to me and said, "We love your podcast. We listen all the time. We play fantasy football again. We listen together." And it like I was almost like they were telling me about their experiences together with my podcast, and I was almost crying. Like I was almost in tears. It was actually truly like it was truly like an amazing experience to hear that because I was like, man, like their relationship was clearly so close, like me and my dad with fantasy football now, and it was wow. Sorry.
No,
it was truly
it
was truly a fantastic thing to hear. It really, really was. Like those two were so close and they both loved my podcast together. It was like I think the guy was around like 30, 35 and the son was around like 10-ish, like 10, like 8 to 10-ish. Like it was really, really sweet to see. And plenty of other fans come up and said, I got to meet so many people. And I also got to compete in this flag football tournament. There's a flag football tournament at the Expo. Me and Luke Sawhook, amazing guy. Please go follow Luke Sawhook on Twitter. He's fantastic. But me and him created this team called the Nacho Ninjas. And we got together a bunch of Twitter people. And we went out and I was so hyped for this game. I was so hyped for the games. But the games were so weird. They were so whack. The rules were whack. Like, it was ridiculous. I guess trying to make them really short, but you get 4 downs to get 35 yards to get in the end zone, and you only get one drive. You get one drive. If you score, like the other team has to match it. Like whatever the first team does, the second team has to match it. If the second team does better, then the second team moves on. If the second team does worse than the first team's drive, that's it. It's over. Like you get one shot. That's it. And on the first play, we threw an interception. So we got 0 yards on our first drive, and this other team got one play for like 3 yards, and they won, and that was it. It was truly unfortunate, but we got the scrimmage after a couple other teams, and we had a blast. It was really great. But yeah, that was fantastic. Can't wait. I think they're having it again next year. I've heard that they're having it again next year, and I'm 100% in. So in for the flag football tournament next year. I really want to show out. I really want to dominate, man. Because I saw a lot of, like, I was running routes and stuff. I saw a lot of eyes on me, like during the practice and stuff. I saw so many eyes on me. They were like, who's this kid? Yeah, there were so many people looking at me. It was weird. But yeah, we were eliminated in the first round. Oh my gosh, what else happened at the Expo? I can't.
Much, right? There's just so much
happened, man. There's so much going on. I was in the Kings Classic drafts again. Those were fantastic. I did make the playoffs in one league, but did not in the other, and I lost in the first round. But oh man, we're trying. Maybe we'll try again next year. We'll see if Bob invites me again. Man, I'm trying to remember like what else happened. There's so much happening.
There was like they had cornhole last year. Cornhole tournament.
I didn't get to compete in it, but I did see it. I did watch it a little bit. It was really, really cool.
Yeah,
watch.
And all the panels that they have there, and all.
The panels. I was on. Oh my gosh! Speaking of like getting thrown in the fire, I got thrown into a panel last second.
Oh,
Ryan Weiss showed me, came up to me. He was like, dude, we need someone for a panel. You want to jump in? It was like 2 minutes before it started. I was like, sure, go for it. And it was just a Q&A session. Everyone was asking fantasy football questions. And I just answered questions. It was great. Like, it was really ridiculous. It was great. I got to sit next to some really nice, really good people. and we just answered a ton of fan questions. It was really crazy. And I was of course all the way on the left, which means every question was given to me first. Every question was given to me first, so I was the first one to answer pretty much every single one. It was brutal, but
you get to be that guy.
So much fun. I had so much fun though. It was great.
Yeah, it is great, and to be able to interact with so many different people,
it's so much different than on a like Twitter screen. Like it's so much different. And it's also so funny because like some Twitter people don't have like their profile as a picture of them or isn't their name. So I'm just like walking up to people. I'm like, "What's your Twitter handle?" I'll remember you then. Like I just like because half the people I like don't remember their. I'm just horrible with names. I'm horrible remembering people's names. I'm sorry. It's never personal if I don't remember your name. It really isn't. Like
no, that's how I feel too.
I very rarely remember people's names. So I'm always like asking, "What's your Twitter handle again, man?" Like I'm sorry, I don't remember you. And they tell me, I'm like, "Oh yeah, we interact all the time." Like I just don't remember.
I'm the same way. There's so many people that are there, and I'm like, I think I know that person, but it's like hard to tell.
I always see so many faces. Like, I know that face from somewhere. I've seen that.
They've been on some podcast I've seen, so yeah, definitely. So yes, it is a great experience. You brought up the live draft with the Kings Classic and everything. I'm going to be on with Bob Long at some point. Well, I've already been on with him, but he hasn't dropped it yet. But there's a surprise about the Kings Classic kind of stuff. So just keep your
I don't know if I'll be in that league or not. He didn't invite me back to back. He didn't invite me the 2 years. I don't know if he'll invite me yet, but maybe that'd be cool.
But I mean, even doing a live draft in general must be. You said for the first time, have you thought about doing one maybe like with your family or in town or whatever?
We do have like a family friends league. Like in our we have a bunch of like it's a lot like dad and sons. Like we do have a lot. We do have a league. Not all the guys are like super committed to fantasy football, and a lot of them got busy lives. Like it's crazy. We've been trying to organize. I think we're really gonna try to commit this year to a live draft. We're gonna try doing it. We'll see if it works out. I really want to. I really do. Like it would really make the year to be able to join everybody together, live draft, and just hang out. Like it'd be so fun. But I don't know if everyone's gonna be able to do it. So we'll see. But I would love to. Yes.
You talked about Dynasty and redraft. Do you have one or the other that you prefer, or do you like them all the same?
I mean, yeah, Dynasty and redraft are the two fantasy football things I really like. I do a lot of DFS too. Like me and my dad actually do a DFS showdown every week. I don't know if you've seen this, Kacey, like on Twitter and stuff. But me and my dad, the last couple of years, every week we make a DFS lineup and compete against each other. And just every week we do it, and it's been really fun to do the last couple of years. And like. Because he's actually like he's been always so supportive of my content. But sorry, I'll answer your question first. And I can talk more about my dad in a bit. Sorry, I detoured. What was your question?
Well, now I'm detoured. Well, I was talking about redraft versus Dynasty.
Redraft. So if I were to choose one, I think I would choose Dynasty. I think it's much more interesting. It's harder. It's a lot harder to do, but it's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more like you got to think a lot more about the future in the next few years. You got to think about years past, like. And the rookies coming in every year, you're basically NFL GMing a fantasy football team, which I think is so cool. I think Dynasty is my favorite platform, my favorite way to play fantasy football. But I love me a redraft league. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I thought for a while it was like I'm all Dynasty or I'm all redraft, but now I feel like people are more accepting of both. So.
Yeah, I love all fantasy football is welcome here. I love all fantasy football.
Do you have a specific topic that you like talking about more than anything else? Like either a player or a position, a team?
Ooh, that's interesting. Man, that's really, really interesting. I think I love talking about like drafting. Like in a draft, when you're drafting, I love talking about I love talking about whether it's a dynasty or redraft, talking about like strategies and like players to pick at certain points of your draft. Like that is probably my like expertise there with like coming into your draft. That's probably it.
And going into something
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the drafting part, like you're in Scott Fishbowl, right?
Yes, I've been in Scott Fishbowl. I've been in the last 2 years. Yeah.
So like going into a draft like that versus going into a regular draft, that's just the basic of the basic.
Yeah.
Like, how do you prepare for different drafts?
It's so you always gotta. I mean, one of the biggest things I always promote in fantasy football to people is always you got to pay attention to your league scoring settings. You got to look at every single number and know exactly what your league scoring setting is, because it really impacts fantasy. Like, it really impacts everything. 4-point versus 6-point passing touchdown, that's everything. That changes everything. Half PPR to full PPR, that changes a lot. Or non-PPR to full PPR, that changes a lot. It changes everything. Because I know leagues that are like more favorable towards yards, and Scott Fishbowl's like higher completion percentage. It even means more fantasy points. So, and then less interceptions mean more fantasy points too. Interceptions are brutal in that league. 4, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're insane. So you always got to be careful just to look at the scoring settings. And like, when I always look at them, I always look at the scoring settings and just try to think of players who are more favorable in this scoring setting. So when you look at 6-point pass touchdowns compared to 4, you always think the pocket passers in the 6-point pass touchdowns are going to be more favorable, because they're usually throwing more passing touchdowns than the running quarterbacks. Like, that's always going to be more favorable than for the pocket passers. I mean, obviously the running quarterbacks always have an edge because they just run the football, but it gives pocket passers the ability to like get up into the top tier of fantasy, when in 4-point pass touchdown, it's much more difficult for them to do. And then with interceptions, like, you don't want to draft Jameis Winston in his 30 interception season, because in Scott Fishbowl, he might have been great in other fantasy leagues. Scott Fishbowl, he was probably pretty bad. I don't remember where he finished in Scott Fishbowl that year, but he must have been bad, because that's 120 fantasy points.
Oh man,
he threw 30, right? Or is it 31?
I don't know. I lost count at 30, so it was
around 30. He lost at least 120 fantasy points just because of interceptions. Like, it was brutal. But you always and like with higher completion percentage, like players that are like just great passers of the football, because in fantasy it's not always about who's the best passer. It's about who's best runner. It's about like Lamar Jackson isn't always the best passer, but he can run the football, so he's great for fantasy. Like, and Jalen Hurts, not this past year because he was great as a passer this year, but the year before, where he was god awful as a passer. As a fan watching it, it was brutal. It was awful. But he was amazing for fantasy because he ran the football. He's like a top 8 quarterback in fantasy most weeks. Like, he was great. But when you look at Scott Fishbowl, the higher completion percentage, those are going to favor players that are great passers, like Aaron Rodgers, great at throwing the football. Tom Brady, when he was like more in his prime, but great at throwing the football. Like Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, who are already great for fantasy either way. But players who are accurate throwing the football, those are going to be more favorable because of the completion percentage things. So you always just got to look at your scoring settings and look at who is going to be more favorable. Like, think of specific players in your mind. Like, try to think of specific players, and then try to think of players who might be similar to that, who are going to be more favorable in those scoring settings. Then just value them a bit more.
And oh no, I lost what I was going to ask you. But no, actually I didn't lose what I was going to ask you. It's here right now. Dynasty leagues. How did you start playing in dynasty leagues? What was that?
So
like?
Dynasty was introduced to me like on Twitter. I see all the people talk about Dynasty and like getting into it. And I was like, just let's go. Let's do this. Let's start a Dynasty league. So I came in with a bunch of Twitter people that I knew, my dad included, like my dad and my uncle, and then a bunch of Twitter people came in. We started a Dynasty league. And I just went from there. I kind of did the research as I played, and I've just gotten more and more familiar with Dynasty and rookie picks and studying. Like, I've specifically done a lot of research lately to watch film on rookies and just learn like how to watch film, how to analyze it. And I've because what I've done this year with rookies is I've watched film. I would look at because I don't watch college really at all. I have almost no background on these players before I'm watching them. So I look at a quick a quick player profile thing, look at what kind of player are we looking at? Is this a smaller but faster player? Is this a bigger, stronger player? What kind of player are we looking at here? Just a very basic thing. And then I look at their film, watch as much film as I can, take as many notes as I can of things I notice. And then I look at the more in detail, a profile, a very in detail profile from some pretty good sources. I look to see where my notes match. It's do my notes match here? Do my notes match there? And usually this year, I've noticed a lot of my notes are matching. A lot of my notes are hitting right. Strengths and weaknesses, they're hitting right. And then the ones that I didn't miss, the ones I missed on that profile, I'll go back and watch more film and see, do I notice this? Did I miss this? Or is this something that I disagree with? Mm-hmm. Watch the film. And then I just come up with that. And then I'm also obviously looking at the stats, looking at their numbers, looking at the analytics and all that. But specifically watching film, I've been studying more that as well. Via Dynasty, I've been trying to follow people on Twitter that know Dynasty. I talk Dynasty, just get more conversations in. Because obviously, I'm not an expert. I've played for 2 years now. This will be my 3rd year in Dynasty. So I'm not like an expert, but I definitely know my way around a Dynasty league. So
Well, you're 16 years old and you have a ton of stuff going on. You got school, you got a job, you got jobs, you got you've got content that you put out on top of doing research and doing homework and doing everything. How do you balance everything?
That's a great question. I get asked that question like I've been asked that question in so many podcasts, and honestly, it's really like how I balance. It's really, really interesting. Like schoolwork. Here's the thing. So what I'm in, like, I get lucky with homework in school because our school, like, we don't really do, like, they don't assign much homework. I get really lucky with it. I'm usually doing a lot of my schoolwork in class. Like a lot of my homework that they assign, I'm just getting ahead in class. Like when I'm in school, like I am pretty laser focused, just trying to get as much work as done as possible, go as fast as possible, get it all done as fast and quick. I mean, obviously efficiently as well. Like I want to do good on the work. I mean, I'm usually like a straight A student in school. Like I'm trying to get it done, like trying to get it done fast. And then if I ever have free time, I'm usually writing articles on my school computer because we have school computers in school. So it's like do all our work on. I'm usually starting Google Docs and writing articles on my school computer, then just emailing it to myself on my regular laptop. And then I'm sending that to my sending out the DLF to edit and post. And then usually also along with writing articles, I'll work on show docs, and then I'll also go on Twitter occasionally. Like I'm really just always working. How I balance it, I'm always working, nonstop working. That's really how it is. And it does sound crazy. Like some people have asked me like how much does that ever have like a real effect on you? Like honestly, like it does. I've definitely had to take breaks every once in a while. And actually lately, I actually learned a few days ago, I have a minor concussion right now.
Oh,
So I'm a little bit like dazed. That's why I've like stuttered a little bit, like podcast stuff. Like, but, I've been dealing with that too. So I've had to limit screen time. But like my family, like my parents, they are workers. Like my parents are productive. They're workers. They get stuff done. And I've kind of taken that, and I really just am a worker. I love working. I love being productive. I love getting stuff done. And I love this specifically, like love fantasy football work. And I love doing it. So always being able to produce and get stuff done is actually fun for me. It's not like work. It's not work.
You're writing articles and you're 16 years old. And I know a lot of 16-year-olds, at least when I was 16, didn't like writing, didn't want to do it. How do you feel about writing in general? Like, what is your thoughts on writing? And how do you prefer to go about writing too? Like, do you like, I guess when you have to think about the audience that you're putting your content out for, like, how do you go about making sure that they can take it in the way that you're intending for it to be?
So I actually, like, throughout school, I've really hated writing. Like English is my least favorite class. I like when it comes to like analyzing and like understanding like poetry or like understanding author's purpose. Nope. And still no. Like still that's not my thing at all. Like nope. Like if you ask me to analyze a poem, I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. People in my class and my teachers see things that I could have never imagined in a billion years. Like I have no idea how to do that. But when it comes to writing, about fantasy football, like I really just like put like, I just like go, like when I do it, I usually just go for it. Like I just like attack it head on and just write and just go. And then I'll do like a read through and like edit it to make it sound more professional, make it sound like, a little more like, cause DLF, like their audience is a pretty experienced and pretty professional, like it's pretty professional, pretty experienced vibe. So you want to give off that kind of vibe when you're writing for them. So I'm always trying to sound like very professional, very experienced when talking about fantasy football. It's not really for newbies. I really just attack it head on and then go through and edit from there. Like that's really how I approach articles when I write.
What about do you sit down when you're doing like rankings? How do you sit down and go about doing that? So
I'm actually like for my Patreon, I'm going to be doing some Dynasty rankings and I'm working on those a lot lately. So what I've been doing is actually, it's a really interesting way to do it. I didn't do research on like how to make rankings. Like I just wanted to do it my way, whatever it was. So I actually pulled up Fantasy Pros Dynasty rankings, right? 2023 Dynasty rankings, right? I pulled them up and I'm just looking at the players. And as I'm ranking them in my head, like going through. And as I do it, I cross off a player on the list. And I just write their name and cross the player on the list, write their name, cross off the player off the Fantasy Pros list. And I'm just doing it on a Google Sheet right now. And I've done it so that I do the top 20 players like in Dynasty, I'm doing 12-team Superflex Dynasty rankings. I go through the top 20 players, and then I look through them more in depth. I'm like, all right, because I do like a quick like fresh of like, this is how I'd rank these players. And then I look through, I'm like, okay, would I really take this player first? Would I really take that player first? And just organize it the way I want to, like more in depth. And I do it like 20 picks at a time. And I'm going all the way to 200.
Oh, okay. You're going all the way to 200.
Yeah, I'm doing top 200. So right now I'm done with about like 140 of them. And then rookies included there as well. So it's vets and rookies right now. And obviously then rookies are going to have to change when the draft happens. That'll change a lot. So we'll see how it goes.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be so fun.
It's going to be fun.
So fun.
Yeah. You've brought up numerous times. You were talking about your dad. You brought up your family, your mom and your dad, and support that they have for you, especially with your dad going with you to the expo, and the story you brought up about their anniversary just cracks me up. But
oh yeah,
how cool is it to have your family kind of on this journey with you?
So it's like, I mean, I have two little brothers as well. Like my mom and my two little brothers are supportive, absolutely very supportive of me, and they're like, yeah, go for it. But my dad specifically has actually gotten involved more than anybody. Like he's involved with all three of our lives. Like my brother Finn, the middle one, he's like very, oh my goodness, so music. Like my dad actually, he thought for one moment that he was going to be a rock star, and he making his own music, and he still has it. And we play his music all the time, like in the house and stuff. Like he thought he was going to be a rock star, and it didn't work out that way. Now he's like a nursing director, but he and my little brother Dasher, like he does little animations on YouTube and stuff. Like he's always working on that. And my dad always works on it with him. It's really fun. But he also comes in with me, and he actually like helped set up my studio because like since he's a background with music, like really, really good with like setting up a studio, like audio, like he's really good with that stuff. So he helped me set this entire thing up. Like my background here and the blankets I have hung up and like the microphone, we got that all set up. And then like, it's interesting though, because my dad, like I'm the one of my family who's into football. My parents were never really into it. My brother's not into football at all. So I kind of got my dad into fantasy football by doing all this. So because now I got him in a Dynasty league, I've got him in a couple redraft leagues with me, and he thinks 3 is too much, and I'm in like 15 over here, like just going crazy. But now I've actually gotten to DFS now because me and my dad do DFS Showdown every week, where every week I mentioned it earlier on the show. We each make a lineup and we compete against each other each week in DFS. And the first season we did 2 years ago, I won, but this year he actually beat me. He actually beat me on the season. It was like by 1, but he still beat me, and it was like, dang, I've done too well. I've talked too well, which is it's really interesting. And he always he sees news, and he's always like, Hutch, did you see this news? Like, did you see this? And I'm like, yeah. And we just talk fantasy. Like he knows it pretty well now. Like he knows fantasy pretty well. And it's so amazing because it's like I don't have many friends that I can talk about. I don't really have any friends that I can talk about this with outside of Twitter. Like I don't have anybody. I mean, like I do have one friend who like listens and is trying to understand it, and she's actually doing like really, really well. Like she's really into it. She wants to understand how it works, and she wants to listen. She wants to learn. It's actually really cool. But my dad like knows it, and we can like talk, and it's really awesome.
That is really cool. Yeah, I don't really have anybody in my life that I can go to and just talk fantasy football to. So yeah, being able to do that over StreamYard or Zoom or whatever, or Twitter, it's great to be able to do that. And then the expo, which is like real life Twitter. The expo,
the expo, you can talk to.
So your dad's super involved, and that's super dope that he does that. Have you ever told him he needs to like start writing articles or putting out content, or
no? He's good, but he's not that good. He he tells me like for the redraft, like for the draft coming up, like he said, if we did a board, like after round 10, I'd be out. Like I wouldn't know what's going on. I wouldn't know the player. I don't know the players like you do there, so I would kind of be out. Like he does know it, but he's not like an expert who can put on content. But I bet if I had him as a guest on my podcast, I bet he could talk. I bet if I set it up right, he could talk with me on my podcast. He could do it.
Very special episode. Yeah,
I bet we could do it. I think we did have an episode together once on my podcast. It was a long time ago. We did have an episode where we went back and forth ranking like the top, like way too early top 25 players in fantasy or something. And we went back and forth and we were just talking the players, and like he actually did pretty well. Like he actually did really, really well. I would pull up the episode if I remember how long. It was early in my podcast days, though. I will say that it was early, but yeah, I don't 100% remember when.
Everybody needs to get their dads on their shows with them for one episode, just because I love to see that interaction, especially it's just really cool to see that relationship. So
it's so cool. Yeah, this has really brought us so close together. Like
that is super
really
dope.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking at not just drafting, but how about trading? Trading. Are you good at doing trades? How do you look at trades, and how do you feel about trading?
Trading is something that I have. I love Dynasty. I love Dynasty trades. I love redraft trades. But in my league, I've been known, like in my home league, I've been known as a player, as the guy who sends the worst trade offers, and I can't deny it because it's so true. I send the worst offers of all time because like I'm working. Like I try to think like sometimes I'm working with like casual players, so I might be able to get away with something. And I send an offer, and they're like, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. What are you doing?" Because I want to win trades.
Yeah.
I want to win them. At the end of the day, I want to win the trade. So I'm gonna send an offer where I'd be winning, and like they're just like, "No, what the crap is this?" And I've been doing in my league. No one trades with me anymore in my league, and it's so sad. But I love talking trade. I love talking trades. Like I'm always up for like if you send me an offer, I'm always willing to talk, like see how it goes, like just talk through a trade with you. I'm like always willing to do that. But I just love Dynasty. I love trading. Like that's the simple answer. I love trading, but I'm bad at it because I send some low ball offers. I don't mean to, and I'm not like, yeah, I'm gonna low ball you so hard. I don't mean to. It's just like I want to win.
You're right.
So I accidentally sent the worst offer I've ever seen in my life, and I'm just like, dang it. Like it really sucks.
Yeah, and then every league's different too. So when you're trying to trade for the same guy in one league, and you don't have to give up anything, and then in another league they want the whole kitchen sink. It's like I don't know.
It really depends on who you're playing with and how they value players. Like it really does.
So watching football with you, how was that experience? If if we were just chilling and watching football, how is watching football with you?
So yeah, that's a really great question. Watching football with me, I'm like, here's the thing. I have like cousins and family who are not chill. Like they are like, specifically I'll shout out my cousin Isaiah. I don't know if he'll listen to this, but shout out to my cousin Isaiah. He's like older. He's a little bit older than me, but he'll like get up and scream and like do whatever. Like he goes crazy. Like he goes absolutely insane. And I mean, a lot of Philly fans do. I get a little bit of that, but not really. I'm usually pretty chill to watch football with. And I'm always like checking my phone for my fantasy scores. Like my family gets so mad at me where I check my phone for fantasy scores during ads and stuff. Like, are you checking your fantasy teams? You're checking your fantasy teams. Like, check out the Eagles team, Hutch. This is your team. Like, these are my teams too, guys. And sometimes, like, if an ad will pop up and it'll be like a highlight from another team, I'm like, yes, I have that guy in my fantasy league. And they're all like, shut up, Hutch. And like, like, a lot of them don't play for fantasy, and I do. And me and my dad are always like, I had that guy in DFS against you. And my family's like, oh, shut up, you guys. It's really great. It's really hilarious. But yeah, I'm overall a pretty chill person to watch football with. And I'm like, I'm always willing to talk football with you, like while we're watching a game. Like I'm pretty chill. I don't like freak out and scream.
And you brought up not watching college football, but
I don't.
Yeah.
The only time I watch college ball is when I'm watching film on players. Like I wish I did watch more college ball. I just don't have the time. Like if I had the time, I would, but I just don't.
I really am trying to figure out how people figure out time. We're however many episodes into this. By the time it'll be like 90 or whatever, and I still haven't figured out how people can fit all of that into 24 hours. I
really don't. I don't either. Like it's just insane because it's always happening during the NFL season.
Yeah,
it's like the NFL on. I'm always doing so much more content in the NFL season compared to regular season. School's in and starting up again. Like I just I don't have it. I don't have it.
What do you do during the summers when you have that time? Do you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, during the summers, like I'm always like it's just more chill, like less content. I'm doing a lot less content over the summer. Like my family is always like busy, like we like to do stuff, go out and do stuff. So I'm really like the summer is kind of like a little bit of a break time for me. Like I get to have a little bit more break time. Yeah, that's really it. Like I don't like do extra content in the summer. I think I am this year though, because I am coming out with the draft kit and the Patreon. So that my summer this year will be pretty active with that content creation wise. But usually summers for me are like more chilled and relaxed. It's more chilled and relaxed time for me.
Nice. Yeah. Enjoy those summers now while you can, So yeah, exactly. Do you have a specific maybe wrinkle or rule that you've seen in a fantasy league that you're like, that's a super cool rule? And I'm, I know the general PPR standard stuff, but is there anything that's kind of like a tweak that you've seen in a league that you're like, I really enjoy this?
Oh man. Man.
And if there's not, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think for you. Like, is there like a specific league? Like, I love last place punishments are so fun.
Yes.
Last place punishments are great. Like just shame that person, please. It's so fun to do that. Like, I've seen the 20. Oh, this is. I don't think I could do this in my home league. That would be brutal. But 24-hour Waffle House challenge for the last.
Oh yeah.
Brutal. That would be brutal. I've seen those videos. Those are tough. That would be a tough last place finisher, but I do love last place finisher and punishments. That's really funny. Man, I can't think of anything else, like any big things. I mean, always like generally like in a league, like if there's like disrespect being thrown out, that's just not okay to me. Like, bro, we're playing fantasy football. Like,
yeah, have fun.
It's my rule on Twitter too. Like if I see if I see people being disrespectful towards me on Twitter, I'm like, I just like. I like anytime I see a troll on my account or like anything, like I usually give them a chance.
Yeah.
Like even if I probably know, okay, this guy's probably a troll, I give them a chance. I like respectfully, like if I put out a take and they say your take's stupid, I put out like real reasoning and I say like, hey, respectfully, I disagree with this. I put out real reasoning. And if they just continue to talk trash, I'm like, all right, I'm done. Get out of here. But if not, then and then if they like actually want to have a reasonable discussion, I'll have a reasonable discussion. Like I'm always open to have a reasonable discussion as a debate with you, as long as it doesn't turn into an argument.
Right.
That's it.
No, and I get that totally. Yeah. Disrespect sometimes you're just like, really. And I followed some people that like we've gotten into like heated conversations, but at the end of the day, we both respect each other and we're like, okay, you do your thing and I'll do mine. And
I've very rarely gotten any heated discussions on Twitter. Like I've very rarely ever.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I see getting heated at Twitter. Like I straight up just leave. I'm like done. I'm not with you on Twitter. Like I don't like I'm very like rarely get like super hyped up like that.
Mm-hmm.
Over sports or over fantasy football. I don't ever get hyped up like that. I mean, I love it. I'm super passionate about it, but I don't ever get angry about it like that.
Right.
I'm not gonna lash out at people, especially Twitter. About it, because part of like my brand that I feel like people have really attached onto is that I'm like really respectful, really nice, and like really like approachable. Like that's really what I want to be. Like that's one of the main things I really want to be when it comes to being a content creator. Someone who's really approachable, easy to debate with, easy to discuss with. Like that's really what I want to be.
And being authentic is very important.
Oh, 100%. You like that? Like literally, like when anyone asks me like, what's the biggest piece of advice you'll ever give to a content creator? You gotta be yourself. If you're not yourself, you're not going to make it. Like you have to be yourself, put yourself out there. People will attach to you. Some people will not. And that's okay. You got to, like I always say, in order to have people that really, really, really like you, you're going to have people that really, really, really don't like you. Like that's it. It's a really like, if you're trying to be right in the middle, you're not going to have any like really loyal followers. You're really not. So I always try to like genuinely, like when I'm on Twitter, be myself. Like I always post, like, I don't just post fantasy football. I post like personal stuff. I post like all kinds of stuff on Twitter. Like I'm just trying to be my genuine self. And if you like it, cool. If you don't like it, then I don't care. You can go away. It's funny. Like it's funny. Like a lot of people hate on my stuff. I have a lot of people like always commenting or DMing me like hateful messages or whatever. And I don't block them. I don't block people. I have like 3 people muted and like 1 person blocked. Like I don't do that. Like I don't do that. Whatever. You can leave it. I'll just leave it there. I'll leave that message there. And I don't care. You can put whatever you want. Okay.
Hey, I like the mindset. Yeah, I've got so many people muted because I'm like, I like it when they argue with themselves because I'm not going to argue back. I don't even get to know they're trying. So, well, you know what's going to happen is we're going to have you come back on the show in a few years and see your journey over, see where you are in 5 years. I mean, like compare, ask the same questions, do one of those Billie Eilish interviews where she answers the same questions over and over every year. But it's been so awesome getting to talk to you, especially getting to do this on a day that we both have off. That's super dope. It's been really wonderful getting to know you. And I'm sure that everybody listening is really excited to get into your content if they haven't already and get to follow you on Twitter and everything. So before we say goodbye, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you and what kind of stuff you got coming out.
Yeah, thank you. You guys go follow me on Twitter at HutchinsonB_FF. You can find all links to my content from there. I make videos for the football guys in their YouTube channel. I write for Dynasty League Football, otherwise known as DLF. And I'm coming out with a Patreon this summer, as well as hopefully a draft kit as well. I've been working on that. And check out Hutchinson Brown's Fantasy Football Perspectives, my own fantasy football podcast to do. Right now, it's just weekly episodes, but as we get more towards draft season, it'll be more like 2 episodes a week. And yeah, that's pretty much all I do, fantasy football content wise, right now.
That's super dope. Before we go I wanted to know, are you still going to go? Are you going to the expo this year as well?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Okay, I can say I'll see you there.
I haven't officially bought tickets, but I better be going.
Okay. Well, there we go. We've got it. Okay, well then I guess I'll see you there, and hopefully everybody else will as well. And everyone listening, oh my gosh, thank you so much for listening. I have had a blast, and I hope you guys have too. So again, make sure you tune in next week for another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem, and remember to stay rad.